Hello and welcome to the rundown to the games with Rob and Rachel. As we build up to Paris 2024, we're going to unlock some incredible Transworld Sport archive, and it's going to help us tell some amazing stories about both the Summer Olympic and the Paralympic athletes. Rob Walker, alongside myself, Rachel Stringer. I mean, you are Mr. Olympics. I love the Olympics, so what better pair, right? But just tell everybody exactly why you are the man for this job.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but
Yes,
I certainly
would.
absolutely love the Olympics. Listen, we know football is the beautiful game and it's given the world some wonderful moments. But in my mind, there is only one truly global event, and that is the Olympic Games. From all four corners of the world, more than 200 countries, every 4 years coming together. Every religion, every colour, every body shape, men and women. The Olympics is just the ultimate festival of the human spirit, of human endeavour, of incredible achievements. It's absolutely mind-blowing. I've covered every Games since Athens '04, but my first abiding sporting memory was my mum waking me up in the middle of the night in LA in '84.
How old are you?
I was 9.
9.
To watch the final of the men's 1500 metres. And the fact that it was the middle of the night made it so memorable. And it was Coe, the defending champion. It was Graham, the reigning world champion, because he'd won Helsinki the previous year. And Steve Ovett still hanging on to the great achievements of his gold and his bronze back in Moscow. It was absolutely breathtaking. And in that moment, my lifelong passion for the Games was born, because they were like gods, Rach. I'd never seen such commitment, such determination. Two men pouring their hearts and their lifelong work into that last 100 metres. So ever since then, I've just loved absolutely everything about the Olympics, and I can't wait for Paris.
If you now don't love the Olympics, well, you should do after what Rob has just spieled off there. I mean, you talk about when you were commentating as well. You've commentated every game since Athens '04. That was probably my first kind of love affair, or when it began with the Olympics. I was 14 at the time. I'd just been to Greece. So technically in my head as a 14-year-old, I was like, I've been to Athens. I got the little mascot at the time, took that home. The Olympics started and I was running at the time. My backstory is that I was an 800-metre runner. And who went on to win double gold that year? I was laying in front of the TV in the living room watching Dame Kelly Holmes go and do the business. Double gold in the 8 and 15. And that's when I also went to myself, I want to go to the Olympics. Didn't quite get that far, but I am ticking off a lifelong dream this year of working at my first Olympic Games proper, I'm going to say, because I was a runner back in the day. But it all starts here for me, and we're starting off this podcast as well.
Yeah, listen, the producer's already going mad here because we could run massively over time. But this one, we're talking about great male Olympians. We will get to the females. We're going to cover some great stuff. Right, we've got to start with Phelps. And I know we're already pushed for time. 23 gold medals. Let's just quickly run through it. Athens, 6 golds, 2 bronze. Beijing, 8 golds, 5 individual. World records or Olympic records in all. 4 golds, 2 silvers in London, and then comes back for retirement for 5 golds and a silver in Rio. More medals than many countries have produced. And I know the counter argument to that is that he's got many, many more opportunities than, say, a Ben Ainsley, who goes silver and then 4 golds because he can only win 1 medal in sailing at one edition of the Games. But Phelps is an icon, isn't he?
Exactly that. Most decorated Olympian in history. Will it be broken this year? I very much doubt it. But stranger things have happened. It is, of course, the Olympic Games. Well, Transworld Sport, they caught up with Phelps, didn't they, when he was just 18? And this was in Baltimore. So let's hear what he had to say as he was preparing for the 2004 Athens Olympic Games, where it also started for me.
It's one reason why we train 7 days a week, why we train on Christmas, why we train on Thanksgiving, 365 days a year. There aren't many clubs that train 7 days a week, so it gives you one extra set training session every single week where you can pick something up. So, I mean, if I'm getting 52 more practices than everybody else is, that's kind of make that little or big difference in the end.
Good, good.
I don't think swimming gets enough publicity in the U.S. In my opinion, I think we're the strongest international team. I mean, I think right now, I think things are starting to change. Over the past few years, I think swimming has sort of grown a little bit. I mean, I think for myself being on the cover of ESPN magazine this past month, I think that it's huge. It's the first swimmer that's ever done that. So coming back with 1 gold medal, obviously, I'll be completely happy. I mean, a lot of people say right now, if I come back with 5 gold medals, it's going to be a disaster. No, it won't. 1 gold medal is all I want.
Well, I think Michael Phelps definitely changed that. Swimming very much was put on the map in terms of USA, wasn't it, after what he achieved. He went on after Athens to take part in 3 more games. Tell us a little bit about the fact that he also retired and then came back to win even more medals.
Yeah, that was interesting, because when I was doing my research for this, because I'm generally more of an athletics man, I thought that was fascinating, because when he came back for Rio, and there were some minor indiscretions, if we want to call it that, in that period when he was initially retired, he said when he went to Rio, this one I'm doing for me and I want to enjoy it. And when you read all the reports about what happened in Rio, and around the media circus that was created for him, and by what he'd already achieved going into Brazil, he was a lot more relaxed, he smiled more, and he was more accessible. And I wonder if he ever sat down and did a sort of massive review of his entire career. I reckon he might turn around and say Brazil was the one he enjoyed the most, because he came back at that from a totally different angle to that which he'd gone into London in 12. And I think that shows the mark of the man, to admit you've made mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. To come back and to be on the podium again. That record, in my opinion, in my lifetime, touch wood, I've got another 20 years, 30 years, hopefully, that'll never be beaten. 23 golds, never be beaten.
But you say that, do you think he enjoyed it the most? He loved the challenge, and he loved other swimmers as well, kind of goading him and saying he couldn't achieve what he did, because he said that actually pushed him on. The likes of Ian Thorpe coming out and saying, no, you're never going to, go and take home 23 medals. He said, I looked at that and I had so much respect for the likes of Ian Thorpe. And I remember a journalist saying, did you kind of question him and did you lose respect for him? He said, no, I loved it, because that's what I needed to keep me motivated. I mean, he was just not really human. I mean, if you talk about his physicality as well, I was actually mentioning this to my mum. I said, did you know this about Michael Phelps? He had a wingspan of 6'7". He's only 6'4" in height, Rob.
Yes.
How does that even work?
Well, and that is, I'm always going on
Genuinely,
about this with my son.
I'm trying to measure my own and I don't even know what mine is.
The reason that's so incredible is that I don't know whether this is 99% or 99.9%, but the vast majority of human beings, tipping a middle finger to tipping your middle finger is exactly your height.
So exactly, that's what I mean.
And that is why his wingspan was so extraordinary.
3 inches bigger.
Massive. But listen,
Superhuman.
Yeah, incredible. But do you know what I find really interesting about the manner in which Phelps did what he did? Everybody was drawing parallels with Mark the Shark, Spitzy from 72. I'm a child of the 70s. So, of course, what Phelps did was amazing. But when my mum started talking to me about the Olympics, she said, you've got to look up, Spitzy from 72. Because I think what's really interesting about Spitz, a very different personality. He won 5 golds at the Pan Am Games in 67 and then turned round and told everybody he was going to win 6 golds in Mexico, which he didn't. He got 2 golds in the relay, he had a silver in the fly, and he had a bronze in the 100-metre free. So he got his fingers burnt by showing off, but it didn't change the way he operated, because he then goes 7 golds, 7 world records, and then retired a month later at 22. And I didn't know this until I did my research on Spitz. He was asked to try out for Barcelona in 92 in his 40s, and he was offered $1 million if he made it. He didn't, but he had a damn good go. But I think that's what's so interesting. When you talk about Phelps, people of my age immediately go back to Spitz. But Spitz, his achievements in Munich were absolutely incredible, but a completely different personality to Phelps. Totally different.
And actually the fact that he used to swim in the sea as well in Hawaii makes it even more incredible. Right, let's move on from swimming, shall we? Should we go back to track and field, which we absolutely adore. Should we talk about one of the greatest sprinters that has ever been, that maybe will ever be, Who am I talking about? Usain Bolt, of course. I think everyone, obviously watching, listening here, will have their own image that just springs to their mind when we talk about Usain Bolt. But he was an absolute superstar, and for me, changed athletics.
Oh, listen, he's up there with Pele and Ali for me, because it wasn't just what he did, it was how he did it. The chicken nuggets, the undone shoelace in '08. He is the greatest 100-metre runner, and I am going to put him up there ahead of Owens, because he brought a whole generation of fans to athletics who might not otherwise have come over, because he did it with a smile on his face and as if he was on a grass track. He was just an absolute phenomenon. But it was as much his personality as well as his achievements, I think.
I mean, that was so true, wasn't it? Where you used to see him just moments before a final, either at the World Champs or Olympic Games, and he would talk to the people carrying out his box who were going to go and put the kit in, and he would give them a hat or the number that they stick to their legs and have a little chat or a fist bump, and that made him human, which is why he got so many fans around the world, in my opinion as well. He was superhuman, and I always question, if he could had a better start, how quick would he have gone?
Oh, come on, you can't do that. You can't do that to the man. You can't do that.
He used to say his weakness was his start, but as soon as he got into his stride, he was in full flow and we saw what happened. I'm saying he would even go that. What if, how fast could I have gone? He was that tall that he couldn't unfold himself quick enough from the blocks. Anyway, I could talk about Usain Bolt all day long.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal man. 958. And when you think about in the early days, you know, that world record over the 200 was absolutely incredible. And people thought he was a 200 runner who would graduate to the 4, and then he persuaded the coach for '08 that he might have a crack at the 100 metres. But bad start or average start, Bolt's the man. And Transworld Sport caught up with him in Jamaica just when it was all beginning, when he was 17.
Hey Transworld Sport, you made it. Welcome to Jamaica. I really am proud of myself too for doing so well and making Jamaica proud. And I know Jamaica fans will always be behind me 100%. So I just thank them for everything they have done for me, from World Juniors they have been keeping and been pushing me onwards. The Olympics is really a big event coming up next year. Everybody's looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it, but it's not really on my mind because I have a lot of track meets before that. And I'm just hoping that I'll keep injury-free and I'll have a wonderful track year so I can go to the Olympics and do my best.
What an amazing, amazing chance to see Bolt. And if you could have told him then, at the age of 17, all that would unfold, I'm not sure he would have believed you. And it is incredible when you think about the fact that he won back to back 100-metre titles. I am not sure that will ever be done again. He crossed the line in first place in 9 races, 100, 200, 4x1s, from '08 to 16. The man's legacy is complete.
And he never felt like the pressure got to him. That's what I think as well. He always looked like he was enjoying it a little bit, like we were talking about Michael Phelps. Maybe the pressure got to him with Bolt. He never seemed to have that pressure. I like as well, Rob, to look at kind of the evolution of records, and that kind of brings us nicely on to our next athlete, because Usain Bolt took this chap's 200-metre record. Who was it?
The one and only Michael Johnson. And when you look into Bolt's eyes when he crossed that line, you could tell how much it meant to him to break Johnson's record. Very different type of athlete, though, Johnson. All business, game head on. And do you know what I used to love about Michael Johnson? First of all, the fact that he bounced back from such disappointment in Barcelona in '92 when everyone was hanging the gold medal round his neck. He had an unorthodox way of running. You would not coach somebody to lean in like that and have a short stride. But until Bolt came along, Johnson was the man. And in many people's eyes, he still will be. And, you know, you raced to a far higher level than me. How impressive that he was able to bounce back from '92. And basically, I think the story was, I read his book. He went to somewhere in Spain for some kind of PR or it was like a money-making exercise 6 weeks or 7 weeks ahead. And he had some ham and didn't think he'd been affected by it, but he'd lost a little bit of weight and he thought that was him just getting in shape for the games. He hadn't been tested, physically in any races because he was tapering in those last few weeks and hadn't noticed he'd got weaker. And then obviously, didn't make the final in his greatest event. But what a man to bounce back from that and to go on to be a 400 legend as well as a 200 legend.
Well, he speaks about that as well, didn't he? He said that after that incident of the food poisoning in 92, he looked at himself and said, I already have such singular focus. What else can I do? And he actually spoke about saying, well, I could get a food tester to go and test the food 24 hours before I eat it, but that's not physically possible. I have to control what I control, and those road bumps will come around. But then he went on to become the unusually contested incredible athlete of both 2 and 400. That's still not something we see that much. You do 1, 2, you even do 4 and 8, but the 400 metres is the one that you kind of do on your own. But Michael changed how you run that as well. He turned it in to this out and out sprint. I mean, I even remember when I got taught to run the 400 metres, you attack the bend, you float the back straight, and then you attack again if you've got anything left with about 150 to go. But he just went completely hell for leather and changed the event, which people will remember him from as well. But the fact that then he went on to win gold, not once, but twice, and defend that, and the rest, as I say, is history.
Yeah, it was amazing. And actually, I hadn't realised this till I did the research. When he did the double, it was the same day that Lewis had won 4 in a row in the long jump. And then Marie-José Pérec had done the 2 and the 4 double in the female competition 15 minutes before he did it. So how else did he put his mark on it but with a 19.32? And Atto Boldon crossed the line. And when he'd recovered, I think Boldon got the bronze. When he'd recovered, somebody asked him about Johnson's time. And he said, 1932? He said, it's basically the year my dad was born, not a time. It's a moment in history. It was just, and you never thought that was going to be beaten until Bolt came along. But listen, what Johnson did for athletics was amazing. But again, there were very big differences in personality between Phelps and Spitz, and very big differences in personality between Bolt and Michael Johnson. And that's why the Olympics is such an amazing thing to watch, because it takes all sorts of personalities, as well as the prowess and the fast twitch fibers and the training. It encompasses every element of humans, and that's their personalities as well as their achievements. That's why it's so good to watch.
Yeah, it was so good for people growing up as well. If they are an introvert, they can look to the likes of Michael Johnson. He changed the world of 400 metre running for sure, and whatever he did, and you can see that with the Olympic Games, whatever you wear, whatever you say is picked up and made into complete history as well. And you probably remember the gold spikes. You're talking about that to me earlier. You used to sit as well on your commentary platform and watch what people were doing in warm-ups. What spikes are they wearing? What clothes are they wearing? How iconic do they look today? And Michael Johnson was one of those icons, of course. The first man to win the 200 and 400 metres in 96, and the first man as well to win 400 metres back-to-back in 96 and at Sydney in 2000. And Transworld Sport actually caught up with him at his home in Texas. I love to see an athlete when they're relaxed and they can reflect on what a remarkable career they had.
My career has spanned 11 years professionally, and over the 11 years there's been so many different things that I've been able to accomplish, and some, in most people's mind are more important than others, but for me, each one was a goal, and each one was something that I worked really, really hard to achieve, so they're all special for me. I really don't focus too much on trying to have any particular presence on the track. I just focus on running my race and focusing on that and executing my own strategy. Now, that in itself may create a presence that intimidates some of my competitors, and if it does, then that only serves to help me, because that's less work that I've got to do.
Well, let's go a bit further back still from Michael Johnson. We're taking a deep dive into Olympic history, Rob. And let's talk about a teammate of Johnson. And this is Carl Lewis. They were teammates in Barcelona in 92, then Atlanta in 96. And I'm sure someone that Michael Johnson very much looked up to as well when he was kind of coming through the ranks. You can't not when you look at someone like Carl Lewis and all that he achieved and all the medals he got, 10 overall in his career. I think when you look at track and field, we're talking about Usain Bolt and how many he managed to get. Okay, he kind of got 9 golds and then one was taken away from him. 10 medals, unless you do all the sprints, you kind of go, how does that work? Well, it's because he didn't just do the sprints, did he?
Oh,
he threw a jump in there as well.
The fact that Lewis and Johnson were teammates is a testament to Lewis's longevity, because when I think about Carl Lewis, I think about completely flat hands. I'd never seen anybody. He was the smoothest looking 100-metre runner until Asafa Powell from Jamaica came along.
I always got told to do this as well. Don't squish the crisp packets.
Yeah, but
so if you're doing that, straight hands.
Completely flat hands. Nobody ran like Lewis
Stressful,
until Lewis.
I would say.
But he just floated down the track. And listen, when he won in LA, he won the 100 by 0.2 of a second. That is an enormous winning margin in the 100 metres. But I think his greatest achievement, okay, he replicated Owens and he did the 1, the 2, the relay and the long jump in LA in his home games, which was unbelievable because he'd only done 3 events in the Helsinki World Champs the previous year. So he was desperate to emulate Jesse Owens. But I think the fact that he won 4 long jump titles in a row is the defining, in my opinion, that's his defining mark of greatness, because he only just scraped onto the team for Atlanta, and then he goes and wins the final in 8:50, emulating what Al Oerter had done for the Americans, winning the discus 4 in a row from the 50s and the 60s. So Lewis's longevity as well as his talent was amazing. But when he first came on, it was the way he just floated down the track. It was otherworldly. It really was.
Why do you think we don't see as many athletes now doing the 100, 200 and long jump? Is it because you have to focus on one to be the best these days? Because we don't really see, I'm trying to rack my brains and think, in recent Olympic Games, have we seen a 100-metre runner go and do a double with the Olympics? Because we used to see that quite a lot in history.
Yeah, well,
or it was kind of more of a popular thing to pick.
But it's so competitive now. In the old days, you expected 800-metre runners to double up and do the 15.
Or do a relay.
There's hardly any do that now, because you've got to be running, as far as the men's is concerned, you've got to be running what? Low 143s, maybe high 142s, and the same with the women's 800 metres. What Lewis did was absolutely incredible. 4 long jumps in a row. I don't think that'll ever be done again because they're so prone to injuries, long jumpers.
Well, he got his last medal in the age of 35 in 96, and that was the long jump one that nobody expected him to get. But Transworld Sport caught up with him back when he was still a spring chicken at the age of 30.
So I did the right thing. I did the right thing as a competitor. We made the right move because I ended up winning all the medals. But I just don't think that, looking back now, that I would do it differently, because going with that mindset, not going to the Olympics before, not knowing what the effects of it would be, never competing in 4 events in 1 meet in my life before, I had to take every single precautionary measure in order to try to ensure that I do my best.
Well, let's move on then, shall we? From sprints to middle distance. A few events that I love, probably biased as a former middle distance runner myself. 800 metres back in the day, Rob. For me, when we think middle distance, 8:15s predominantly. I was thinking about moments that I watched in years gone by, and I have to look at London 2012.
Oh.
Probably one of my favourite Olympic Games. I was actually a runner, so giving teas and coffees out, not an actual runner, giving teas and coffees out to people around the stadiums, actually at the equestrian events. Anyway, we'll talk about that later, I'm sure. But obviously I watched on TV, the 800 metre men's final, one of the greatest races ever. David Rudisha, this tall, leggy athlete who had the pressure of the world on his shoulders there. And what did he go and do? He went and got himself a world record in that final. And for me, it was just incredible to see how he did it. But when I was kind of looking into this as well, Lord Sebco, obviously, who was a vital, crucial figure in putting on the games, came out after the games had finished and said his moment of the games was watching David Rudisha break the world record inside the Olympic Stadium on that fabulous night. Because that's the most difficult thing to do when the pressure's on, when you've been unbeaten in, 26 races between 2009 and 2011. You had a little bit of a blip. Then to come back and win in style like you did. Can you remember that one? Were you commentating it?
Oh, listen, there's only one word for that. There is only one word for what he did. Majestic. It was like watching poetry in motion. Rudisha in 12 did the impossible. And I don't mean running the 800 metres in 100 seconds. 100 seconds, by the way. I don't mean that.
Go on, 140.91.
Outshone Bolt.
Do you think so?
Yes, without question.
Well, Lord Seb Coe obviously
listen,
did.
He outshone Bolt. What Bolt did in London was absolutely unbelievable, following on from 08 when it was all untied shoelaces and chicken nuggets. Pressure was on him in London massively, and he delivered with 3 golds. The moment of the games in that stadium belonged to the Kenyan David Rudisha. And it was the way he ran the race. He was, I'm the man. My shoulders are out. I'm taking this on. I am going to win the gold medal, and I am going to break the world record. I'm going to be the first man inside 141. Come and dance if you want to dance, but I'm going to have the last move. And he did. It was simply majestic. Now, I know that's your moment. He's your guy. As we're talking about male Olympians, we are getting to female top Olympians in a separate episode. Going back to the middle distance.
You got a favourite? You're going to top?
I've got loads.
Rob, you can have 1 or 2 maximum.
No, I'm taking 3. I'm just going to do it really quickly, Stringer. Herb Elliott, 1960, 44 races in a row, 1956 to 1960. The incredible, mercurial Australian who promptly retired. Then comes Peter Snell, who did the 8:15 double in 64 for New Zealand. Unbelievable athlete. Legendary stories about him training on sand dunes, down in New Zealand. And then
it works, can I tell you? Sand dune running definitely builds strength in the legs. Sorry, carry on.
And lactic acid.
Yes.
And then you've got to go to Coe. Now, if just to dot the I's and cross the T's here, he is without question the first male to successfully defend the 1500 metre title. A few people mention James Lightbody's win, but that incorporated a victory in 1906, which was an intercalculated games, not a specific Olympic Games. So let's park Lightbody. Coe is the first man to successfully defend the 1500 crown, and in between 80 and 84, he'd had glandular fever, he'd had a torrid time with injuries. So it's got to be Elliott, Snell, and Coe for the middle distance. And you're now going to make a case for El Guerrouj.
I was about to say, Hitcham El Guerrouj. You've got to talk about him. The unluckiest man, possibly, in the 1500 metres. There's a quote that I love here, before we get into him. It was ahead of Athens, and a commentator, as he was lining up, said, will he be the best ever or the best never to have won the Olympic Games 1500 metres? Was it you, Rob?
No, it wasn't me.
I know it wasn't. It was an Australian chap.
Yeah, it wasn't me. Great line. I think you might have to throw Steve Cram into that conversation, because Crammy got the silver in 84 and was an unbelievable 800 metre runner as well. Listen, going back to El Guerrouj, it was a sequence of disasters, wasn't it? Because he fell at the bell in 1996. The King of Morocco phoned him. He was in bits. And the King of Morocco said, "You're still our hero. Don't worry." And that changed him. Then he goes to Sydney, and Noah Ngeni, the Kenyan, had been working for many years as a pacemaker in races that El Guerrouj had been winning. And then as it got closer to Sydney, Ngeni started thinking, hang on a minute, I'm actually closing the gap on this bloke. I can finish some of these races. He gets the silver again for the second successive games. He finishes in tears. He goes to Athens in 04. Now check this out. He'd won 84 out of 87 races over 1500 metres across his career. And finally he did it. For the third games in a row, he was in tears. But at last in Greece, they were tears of joy, not tears of heartache. That's a story good enough for Hollywood.
And please watch that back as well, because himself and Bernard Lagat on that final, you thought Bernard Lagat, then not actually running for the USA at the time. He was still running for Kenya, I think, wasn't
Yes,
he?
he
In
was,
that
yes.
race. Neck and neck the entire way. If you watch it and you're into middle distance running, you will have goosebumps. We've obviously just ruined the outcome there. He does go on to win, but with the smallest of margins. And that, again, is the eye popping out of your head moment of I've finally done it, isn't it? That's the reaction that you get from Hicham El Guerrouj at that moment. And it just feels like the weight on his shoulders at that point was incredible. And the quote for me will live on for him there.
Oh, he was an absolute beast when it comes to training, an absolute beast. And as if to prove it, Transworld Sport caught up with El Guerrouj in 97 before he knew he was going to end up at last becoming the champion in 04.
I do have a gift from God, but it's a blessing that required hard work. I trained in the morning, in the afternoon and at night. I've trained hard for so many years. All those who trained with me were other young people, just starting out. But with dedication, perhaps one day they'll be like me. I just wanted to win those medals for my personal satisfaction, so I can leave a respectable legacy in the history of athletics, and to win the respect of all Moroccans, to leave an honourable legacy for all Moroccans, and also all the fans, and my children and grandchildren.
Well, that's it from us from now, because we could go and talk all day. But tune in to the next episode when you can hear some more great stories about the greatest male Olympians of all time.